In the last few weeks, we've seen every news article, every YouTube video, every type of media you can imagine telling you that banks are failing and the apocalypse is coming. As someone who doesn't watch the news and I know what they do because fear sells, I have a different take on the whole situation. In this video, I'm going to give you the unfiltered truth about what's going on with the Silicon Valley Bank situation and just banks in general. And I'm not saying you're going to feel better or worse about the situation, but at the end of this video, you should have enough information to make up your mind for your own self. Hi, my name is Adrian and this is Always Talk Money. I like to talk money as it relates to everyday life. I don't have any investing tips or get rich quick schemes. Just a candid conversation amongst friends. Welcome, and let's get into the video. Warren Buffett once said it's wise for investors to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Ever since I took an interest in personal finance, that quote has always stuck with me. It told me that rich people, the wealthy, the 1% among us, play a very different game when it comes to wealth. And I want to play that game as well, because who wouldn't want to be wealthy, right? And so when I think about this Silicon Valley Bank situation, I'm thinking to myself, what would Warren Buffett do? If I was a fly on the wall in one of his offices, I'd like to know what he's thinking and what he's going to do about the situation. And I think I have a general idea about what he's going to do. But first, I want to break some things down with regards to the Silicon Valley Bank situation. We'll come back to Warren Buffett at the end of the video, I promise. Let's role play for a second. No, not like that. Get your minds out the gutter. It's not the type of role playing I'm talking about. But for argument's sake, in this role playing adventure that we're going on, let's say you want to go into a bank. You need some money. You need a car loan, you need a mortgage, you need a personal loan. Basically, you need some cash to handle some business that you needed to handle. It's very nerve-wracking, right? Because we all know how the credit system works. The banking manager is there behind his screen, looking at all your personal details, asking you all these very personal financial questions, and you're feeling very insecure. You're feeling your gut wrenching because it's like, am I going to be able to get this money or not, right? And they're looking at you with a very judging eye. It's very condescending if you ask me, right? They ask you about the last 5 places that you've lived, addresses that you can't even remember. They ask you about your last 3 jobs and your last 3 managers that you haven't even spoken to in forever and ever and ever. All these things they ask you only to deny you that loan that you needed. And then they'll tell you, oh, we'll mail you something in the mail to tell you why we denied your application today. But let's be honest, you don't care. All you know is that you didn't get the money that you needed. For all the condescension that banks like to do to us when we go in and try to get a loan, get pre-approved for a mortgage, and so on and so forth, you have to understand that banks are usually brokered in you. They don't even have their own money. They're using your money to make a profit, to build their wealth, because it's an elaborate shell game of money musical chairs. And if you've ever played musical chairs, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Pretty much a lot of banks live paycheck to paycheck. They use fancy terms like unrealized losses. It's the same way when you invest in stocks and you put $100 in a stock and it goes down immediately. You have unrealized losses. You didn't lose your $100 until the point you decide to sell that stock and realize your losses. You have unrealized losses, and banks do the same thing. This is where the Silicon Valley Bank situation comes in. You see, when you deposit money in a bank, let's say you deposit $100, they immediately take that money and give it to somebody else, meaning they use your money to service a loan for someone else. You give them $100, they loan out $100 to somebody else. Now, let's say the next day you come back for your $100 and be like, I want my money back. They will give you $100, but that's $100 that they took from someone else. That's not your original $100. It's basically musical chairs. And so banks can keep doing this in perpetuity until what happened with Silicon Valley Bank is that everyone comes back for their $100 at the exact same time. And eventually in this game of money musical chairs, someone is going to left holding the bag, someone is going to be left without a chair. So basically this is what's called a bank run, and this is what happened at Silicon Valley Bank. But here's the kicker. All the news and media fear-mongering telling you that banks are failing. It could be a ripple effect, a domino effect, all types of effects. but they're leaving out one key detail, and I'm going to break it down right now. But first, if you're liking this video so far, guys, please give a like for the YouTube algorithm. I want this video to stretch out to more people. Also, I want to grow the subscribers. Thank you guys so much for 50 subscribers. That's a big milestone for me. I really appreciate it. But let's get into what the kicker is with this SVB Bank situation. The name of the bank is Silicon Valley Bank. It's based out of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley. Rings a bell, right? Oh, that's where all the tech companies are. A lot of tech startups, tech companies bank with Silicon Valley Bank, right? So what do we know about tech? It's a very volatile industry. Don't believe me? Think of a tech that you thought was going to be the hottest thing, the newest thing. It's going to change the world. And then 6 months later, you have never heard of it ever again. Tech goes in and out of circulation. New trends come in, new trends die. That's just how the tech world goes. So when you have a volatile industry like the tech world that operates with hundreds and billions of dollars, it's only a matter of time before something like this was going to happen. Because let me explain. Remember when I told you guys earlier that when you deposit money in a bank, they use your money to loan it to somebody else. And when you come back for your money, they're basically taking money from somebody else to give you back the original money that you banked. So imagine that times 1 million. When a tech startup deposits money in a bank like Silicon Valley Bank, let's say $100 million, they're VC funded, investor funded, all this money is going into this new world-changing app, right? They raise a bunch of money, but they need somewhere to store this money. So they go to Silicon Valley Bank. And another tech startup does the same thing, and another one, and another one, and another one. And what happens is when all these hundreds and millions of dollars of deposits are going in at the same time, and they're using that hundreds and millions of dollars to buy assets, this is the bank, Silicon Valley Bank, buying assets like government bonds and loaning it out to other people. It's a money shell game on a much larger scale. So in the case of SVB Bank, all these major depositors wanted their money back at the exact same time. And now we're not talking about regular people with $100 here and there, a couple thousand here and there. Imagine all these tech startups that are going down in flux. They have money, they don't have money. Imagine all of them wanting back $50 million at the same time, wanting back $100 million at the same time, wanting back even $1 billion at the same time. In Silicon Valley, they basically play with monopoly money. They don't operate like me and you as regular people. And so all these tech companies wanted their money back at the same time from SVB Bank, and that's what ran the bank out of business. It was a bank run on steroids. Now, in the case of the media, they're fear mongering, but by and large, in my opinion, major banks are safe. Because there's one caveat that the media is leaving out. 89% of their deposits were from tech companies and tech startups with hundreds of millions of dollars in deposits. Compared to a regular bank, they have 47% of their deposits in big corporations, tech companies, and the other 53% in just regular Joes like you and me. Now you might ask, what does that mean? Picture you run, let's say, a trucking company, and you make $1 million, but you make $1 million because you have one client that pays you $1 million. Another person has a competing trucking company, but they generate also $1 million, but they generate it from, let's say, 100 clients spread out. The first person who has $1 million client, they're doing well, but if they lose that client, they're immediately out of business. Compared to the second person who has $1 million in revenue as well, but they have 100 clients or 1,000 clients. I forgot what I said, I'm sorry. But they have multiple clients. And so if they lose one, it's not going to affect the business so much. So Silicon Valley Bank had clients that were big ticket clients, these tech companies, hundreds of millions of dollars in deposits for a single client. And so if all those clients withdraw their money at the same time, then the bank goes kaput. And that's not going to happen to regular banks, because regular banks have more regular people, more small businesses. They do have some tech startups. They do have some big clients, but it's more spread out evenly. And so unless those thousands and thousands and thousands of different demographics of clients are going to try to withdraw their money at the same time, big banks are not going to go out of business. So the next question to ask is, why is the media making such a big deal out of this situation? Well, it's easy. Negativity sells. If you know anything about marketing, news media, print media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, negativity sells. And so the more fear mongering the media does, the more ratings they get, the more ad buys they get, the more money they make. That's simply what it is. But if you understand that Silicon Valley Bank had big clients with hundreds of millions of dollars for each client, and all of them came for their money at the same time, that's why the bank ran out of business. Then you understand that your bank, like a Wells Fargo, a Bank of America, a Chase Bank, those banks are very safe and very rock solid. Matter of fact, I made a video about saving your money in multiple bank accounts, and one of the reasons is you are insured by the FDIC up to $250,000. In Silicon Valley Bank, 89%, as I said, those big ticket clients, 89% of those funds are uninsured, because they all had money over $250,000. We're not talking about small change right here, okay? We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, as I've repeatedly said. So that's what the case is with the Silicon Valley Bank. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, I said we're going to talk about what would Warren Buffett do. You see, the wealthy, they like to take advantage of opportunities. And with the news media coverage about what's going on with the banking system right now, a lot of the stocks in banks are down. They're down big time, right? What is Warren Buffett and other wealthy elites doing? They're buying all of those stocks. Billy Bob and Sally from Middle America are selling their stocks in Chase, selling their stocks in Bank of America, selling their stocks in Wells Fargo because they think the banking system is going out of business, and all those rich people are buying those stocks for cheap. Now, I'm not telling you what to do, but if you want to think like the wealthy, because this is always talk money, we want to talk money as it relates to everyday life, and this is what the wealthy do. They fearmonger you, and then they get you to sell your stuff for cheap, and then they buy it for cheap. And when the prices go back up, the rich get richer. The wealth game is played at a high level, guys, and if you want to change your circumstances, you gotta be able to read in between the lines and do what rich people do. Thanks for watching.